Anyone who would speak with authority on the poets of the Renaissance must have a broad acquaintance with the writers of classical antiquity. Okay. Now, obviously the phrase that is highlighted is anyone who would speak. Options are anyone who would speak, if one would speak, he which would speak, anyone desirous for speaking, those who have a wish to speak. Okay. Anyone who would speak with authority on the poets of Renaissance. So I have two ways of looking at this question. Okay. Now, given the context itself, anyone who would speak with authority on the poets. So would usually, I mean, we all know it's a past tense of will, but would kind of expresses a desire or intent, right? What is the function of would? How, when you use sentences with would, it's usually you wish to do something, right? So if you say, I wish I would travel across the world, or I would like to do this, or I would like to, buy a car, whatever. So desire, intent, wish. So anyone who would speak, so would itself in the context, right, is giving me that meaning, saying anyone who desires to speak, anyone who has an intention to speak, anyone who wishes to speak with authority on the poets of the Renaissance must have a broad acquaintance with the writers of classical antiquity. So if you ask me, I wouldn't make any change as such in the context, but looking at my options, I don't have any of those options, right? I don't have no correction required in the options, but I would gladly go with option 1 because it's the same as what is in the context. However, personally, if you ask me in terms of improving the sentence, I would inch towards anyone who wishes to speak. The reason why I will not choose 5 is because 1, it's too wordy, it's just too many words, right? Acquaintance, he's an acquaintance, meaning I don't know much about him, I just met him, right? Somebody who's not a close friend is an acquaintance. But in this context, we're talking about experience or knowledge. So having a broad knowledge or experience with the writers of classical antiquity. Depending on the context, the meaning will change, right? So here, like I said, anyone who would speak with authority on the poets, anyone who wishes to speak, I would improve the sentence this way. And that option is not there. Anyone who has the wish to do something or to do this, I would probably go with the 2 plus verb option rather than for speaking again. I wouldn't change anything as such because, like I said, would also gives the same expression. If I had to improve the sentence, I would say anyone who wishes to speak with authority on the poets of the Renaissance must have a broad acquaintance with the writers of classical antiquity. Shall we move forward? So just for clarity, option 1, otherwise my improved sentence, anyone who wishes to speak. Priyanka's questions, economists have predicted that the country's economic growth falls low to 8% this year. So 4 options given. So I'm assuming based on the options that the highlighted phrase, this is obviously a sentence improvement or phrase substitution sort of a question, right? So I think this is the highlighted phrase, right? So the very obvious clue word in the question, can somebody quickly point out what the clue word in the question is? There is a clue word in the context which helps us arrive saying, hey, this is the answer option. Can somebody point out what that clue word is? Clue word is predicted. So obviously we're talking about economists are saying that something is going to happen in the future. So the only option that gives me that is option 3. Economists have predicted that the country's economic growth will fall to as low as 8% this year, right? That easy. So look for these clue words, you won't miss getting the right answer option. The second one, in all likeness, the company will fail to achieve its production targets this year. So looking at the options again, option 1 with every likeness, option 2 in all likelihood, option 3 it is likely for, option 4 in every likeness. So I'm assuming this is the highlighted phrase. So in the second question, right, the meaning that the expression is giving is, so they is saying, very likely that this is something that will happen. The company will fail to achieve its production targets this year. So this is more to do with a colloquial phrase, right? So the only option that we are all familiar with is in all likelihood. That's the collocation, we know that. We've heard people use that in various other sentences. In all likelihood, it will rain tomorrow, or in all likelihood, they might even declare a holiday tomorrow, right? So very likely, probably. So let's move on. Let's quickly look at this. This seems like sentence improvement. Yeah. The psychologist reported that the most common problems undergraduates experience stem from a lack of self-esteem, difficulty in adjusting to university life, and loneliness. So this is the highlighted phrase, and if you look at the options, that's what it is. Now, with questions like this, okay, the first thing that you need to do is not panic, because when you see such big questions, you immediately get into panic mode, because already there's a lot of confusion. The way you can approach these sort of questions is to quickly identify some segments and see what you can eliminate fast, right? So the psychologist reported that. So what he is reporting is a very generic thing. He's saying most common problems that undergraduates experience. So they're obviously talking about more than one problem, plural noun number, okay? So the most common problems undergraduates experience stem from so and so and so. So quick things that you can quickly note down is, what's the tense that I need in the context, right? One. And whenever there is more than one, like a list of series that is coming in the picture, you need to make sure that there is clarity in the meaning that the context is trying to express, right? So in terms of noun numbers is also something that you can quickly pay attention to. So now let's look at the options and see what we can quickly eliminate. So let's identify what is the general tense. The general tense, the psychologist reported that. What is he reporting? That this is the usual case. This is the most common problems these guys face. So which means in this segment which is highlighted, I need a simple present tense, because it is referring to something that is very generic. One. So any context that is giving me anything other than a simple present tense, I'm going to eliminate quickly. So can I look and see which is the option that is giving me anything other than a simple present tense? Option B, stemmed. Option E, experienced. So I'm going to eliminate option B and E because it's giving me other verbs that are not in line with my tense that I need. Next, noun numbers. We're talking about problems, common problems, right? And what are the problems listed? 1, self-esteem. 2, difficult to adjusting to university life. 3, loneliness. 3 problems. So the other thing, the noun number thing, something that is not in the right noun number is option D. Most common problem, singular noun number. Most of you came back and said, hey, the answer is D, but it is not. I'm eliminating that out. I have to choose between A and C. Okay, now let's look at it. Not really. It depends on the noun number that follows that. Okay, it depends on the noun number that follows that. The most common problems, and the problems that are listed is more than one. Now, out of A and C, if I go back and A says the most common problems undergraduate experience stem from a lack of self-esteem, difficulty in adjusting to university life, and loneliness. So, let's look at C. The most common problems undergraduates experience stem from loneliness, a lack of self-esteem, and difficulty in adjusting to university life. Then, the only difference I see between A and C is the difference in the order of the sequence, right? Did you notice that? Here it starts from a lack of self-esteem. Here it starts from loneliness. If I look at these problems 1, 2 and 3, right, here I can't say 3 problems because lack of self-esteem, and the second one is a little confusing for me because it's saying difficulty in adjusting. So the difficulty is adjusting to university life as well as loneliness, is it? Right? I'm not too sure of that. And the best thing for you to do is, when you have more than one, right, as in a list or a series, start with which is the longest one? This is the shortest one, loneliness 1. A lack of self-esteem, that's the next one. Difficulty in adjusting universe, that's the longest one, right? So, in terms of clarity of sequence, I would go with option C. Because it's very, very clear. The first one, A, I don't know if the difficulty is applicable to both adjusting to university life as well as loneliness. So because of that whole sequence clarity, I will lean more towards option C and not A. So what we basically did is, the first thing we looked at is what's the general tense that is required, or what is the speaker expressing in the context. We eliminated wrong answer options. We looked at noun numbers, we eliminated the wrong answer option. Then we chose based on clarity of sequence, and we said, hey, out of A and C, C is more clear because it's very clearly telling me these are the 3 problems that most graduates experience. The most is referring to the undergraduates. Most of the undergraduates, right, among most of the undergraduates, the common problems are loneliness, lack of self-esteem, difficulty in adjusting to university life. Are you clear? So third one, I am saying clarity in sequence. Tense is 1, 2 is noun number, 3 is clarity in sequence.